All right. We are on Tequila Tuesday number 10, I believe, if you can believe that.
I do too.
So thank you all for joining us. Try to keep yourselves muted. If there's chaos going on in the background as best you can, you can take yourself off mute, of course, to ask questions. We're going to talk today with one of my best friends in the whole entire world, Tony Marshall. Say hi, Tony. Wave. Let everybody know where you're at.
Hello, everyone.
Tony and I have known each other for 25 years. We spent the last 3 years of college together. We played on the same top-ranked college tennis team. Tony is half Brazilian, half American. Tony took me down to Brazil over the New Year for the millennium. New Year's 1999, just outside of Rio. We won't get into all the dirty dirt around all of that kind of stuff. But, you know, one of my best friends in the world, we've been friends for so long, we talk all the time. And Tony has been involved in enterprise sales most of his 20 or so year career, I believe, if not all of it.
Yep.
And Tony was one of the first friends of mine who got into sales. And one of the places that I'd love to start, Tony, is with the story of the connection between me, you, and Richard Harris, and how, you know, when I finally got healthy, you know, I was asking you and everybody else, like, what the fuck should I do with my life? So tell everybody, like, this kind of funny story about Richard and how we all tie together.
Yeah, so I guess most folks here probably know Richard already, but I actually worked from him on, I'd say it was my second job out of college, like software-related job. It was a company called PC Guardian, and they all had Guardian Edge. So PC Guardian was sold a computer locks. So imagine that little tic-tac hole on the side of your laptop. I don't even know if those exist anymore. We used to sell that. And then there was like the first version of security software as well in Guardian Edge. So he was my boss. It was all about dialing for dollars in who could make the most dials. There was a nice equation Richard had in place. And I knew if I was over 100 dials a day, I was going to be successful. And I was. So he was a great mentor back then. And then I had this buddy of mine, kind of went to got his master's degree. He was looking for a job. I knew he was just a good, well-spoken person. And I said, hey, Richard, I got this friend of mine. I think he'd be a good fit here. You'll give him a try. He's like, send me his resume. I'm like, all right, send it over. He's like, yeah, no, he's not a fit. He's not a fit. A few years later down the road, Scott had gotten into sales. Now he's become a manager. I can't remember what company it was, but something in the East Bay near Pleasanton, I think. And Richard reaches out to me. He's like, hey, I don't have a job. I'm looking for, any position right now. Do you have any connections? I'm like, yeah, a buddy of mine, Scott. And I didn't tell Richard anything initially. But I told Scott, hey, remember that guy that didn't hire you? So he did the interview. I don't know when Richard actually found out, but Scott hired Richard, and they went from there. He got, became good buds as well. So it was kind of a small world. But did Richard ever know about that, Scott? I can't remember.
No.
What the sequence was.
No, it's actually only fairly recently that both of us remembered that you tried to get him to hire me, and he rejected me. And later on, I was in my first VP role. Actually, it was my first VP
That's
role.
What it was.
And I was trying to hire sales managers, and so you teed up Richard, and I ended up hiring him. So it's a funny small world, even in the San Francisco Bay Area. One other funny story that I'd love for you to tell. I've told the story many times before, just like how useless I am at many things, and how I'm one of the last generation that basically got through college without an email address and without using the internet and all this. But Tony was actually present.
Oh yeah.
The first time I got on the internet. You want to tell that story real quick?
Well, no, let's be clear. I introduced
Did
you
I
to
get
the
it wrong
internet,
already?
right?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you already got it wrong. So it was towards the end of our senior year, and we were getting ready to go to nationals, and they came out with the ranking, and I went to go tell Scott, dude, we made the top 8. He's like, how do you even know that? I'm like, it's here on the internet. He's like, what is that? I'm like, well, you kind of go on here, and I had one of those all-in-one computers that had AOL or whatever, and got on the internet and said, look, right here, Dominican, we're ranked number 8 in the country right now. He's like, you can see that? And so, yeah, that was his first introduction to the internet. And I'm like, yeah, you can see a lot more on the internet too. So it was,
so
as
funny.
college seniors, it got quite interesting really fast.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about your expertise. Tell everybody right now, kind of what your role is, what your sales cycle is like, type of deals you're closing, that kind of stuff. So they have a little bit of background on what you're doing right now at present.
Yeah. So I work for a company called Content Square. We're in the customer analytics space. So if you think of Google Analytics providing you quantitative analytics, so you understand what someone opens, clicks, and converts on, Content Square is more focused on the experience. So understanding kind of the why behind the what. So if you have an analyst that's looking at, I know what someone opened on, I know what they clicked on, but did they have a good experience and did they follow the path that I created for them, right? So you potentially could go on a Home Depot, click away, purchase something, but we're super frustrated. Google's going to say, that's great, you got a conversion, but did you have a good experience? No, you're going to go back to Amazon, 2 clicks later, you can purchase the same thing. So you're kind of stuck in that pattern. So our focus is working with, the top enterprise companies out there. So I personally am responsible for the Gap, Disney, Walmart, Home Depot on a global scale, and making sure their experience for their customers is kind of optimized to its fullest. So we're augmenting a lot of that quantitative analytics space. So it's kind of high level. If anyone has any questions, if that made sense, or you want to dig in on that, I'm happy to expand there.
Now you're working now with these like mega companies like Disney and Adidas and companies like that.
Yeah.
Walmart, I think you worked with a while back. Talk about Talk about the difference between working with, let's say, a mid-market type client and a true enterprise client that is just like a monolithic, sized account. Like, what are you doing differently there to break into the account and then actually close it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So to take a step back first, I've been with Content Square for /ClickTail because we were acquired. ClickTail is the company I was previously at, and they were acquired by Content Square, but for a total of 5 years. So I've been in kind of multiple different roles. When I first came on board, I was just a hunter. They wanted me to bring in new logos. I was one of the first outside sales reps that they brought in here in the United States. We were an Israeli-based company. And so my focus is just get new logos. So once we started bringing those on board, they needed someone to start managing those relationships. So I would close T-Mobile, Costco, Adidas, and I had great relationships there. So I maintained those, kept working those and renewing those while I was also going after new business. Now, some of those accounts I closed also because I was kind of focused West Coast, Pac Northwest, was the example Scott's asking for is, Eddie Bauer, right? While it's a brand that we all know, it's really a mid-market company. It's not that large. So the real difference between them and Eddie Bauer versus, a Walmart or even call it Disney is there's really just one group that's focused on one domain, one website. And there are not many divisions within there that I have to worry about for what I'm trying to sell. So there's the VP of digital, and then there's probably a senior director, and then there's a manager, and there's a team in there with some analysts. So it's the network there is not that difficult to kind of map out and make sure that everyone that needs to be using the platform is using it. So those are pretty straightforward. And I still manage some of those because the relationships, I've built such strong relationships that they say, hey, Tony, just stick with these. But on the other side, working with the Disney's, I'll give Disney as an example, right? Is probably all know there's the Disney parks, there's Walt Disney, there's Disneyland, there's Alani, there's Disney Cruise Lines, there's, you name it. Then you get into Shop Disney. There's Shop Disney US, there's UK, there's EMEA, there's APAC. Then you tie in Disney Plus, and then you tie in Shanghai, Paris. I mean, it's massive, right? So how do you take where we started off when I first closed that, Park Disney, just siloed, and take that relationship and the value driving from there and expand that global MSA or contract and build out and bring on those other brands too. So that's kind of what they put me in charge to do. So that was kind of that's the biggest complexity, right? So there's all different divisions. I think that's the big difference when you're looking at like a mid-market deal and some of these enterprise deals. It's all the different groups that potentially you could be selling into. So, Eddie Bauer is a 100K deal.
And the bigger the client, the more groups there are, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, just Disney parks alone, we have a monthly, well, not now because a lot of the parks, majority are closed, but in pre-COVID, we had a monthly meeting where I would have about 4 to 6 VPs on a call, a handful of directors, and they tasked us with different things like, hey, we're looking to update our checkout path or checkout flow. So we need you guys to give some recommendations in that. So I'd work with my consultant, and then we have a presentation where there's like over 100 people in the room that are basically taking our recommendations and making multi-million-dollar changes to what they're going to be doing on their website. And without our data, they could not make that change. So building out this kind of a flow within this Disney parks of like where we become mission critical allowed me to take that use case and evangelize that across the other groups. And then building those relationships with the executives allowed me to then go to Shop Disney saying, hey, I work with such and such. We're doing this great work. I'd love to kind of showcase what we could do with your group. And I've been doing that over the last several years and slowly expanding that relationship. And so we've grown it from, I think, not even 6 digits to now we're over $1 million. And next in line, fingers crossed, Disney Plus here in the next few months. That could be as we all know, Disney Plus is exploding. So to have them come on board would trump everything I've already done so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I got a bunch of questions already flying around. I want to start with Omar. Omar, you take yourself off mute and fire away, man.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. So Tony, my question is, when you first started in your role, it sounded like you're probably one of the first sales reps, outside sales reps that were hired in the business. You probably didn't have the luxury of these case studies and these customer stories that you can hand off, which I'm familiar with. Like that's how it was in my previous role. Spend some time in the business, you get those customer wins, and it's much easier to sort of knock down those doors. But in the early days, I'm curious to see or to understand if you have any tips with regards to jumpstarting these opportunities and getting these deals sort of, because you really got no support in those early days. You don't got like a BDR, you don't got like an SDR, and it's kind of like all on you to just pick up the phone and go. So I was wondering if you have any tips on that.
Well, I mean, when you speak of on the SDR front, I've never relied on an SDR. To me, that's just been the gravy on top. Every role I've ever taken on, I just like, oh, I get an SDR, great. Okay. But I've all the deals, I'd say 90% of the deals I closed at ClickTail/Content Square were without an SDR. The big ones especially. They brought in some of the lower ones, but I just relied a lot on my network, building relationships with executives. And then, it's a small community. So I'll take the Bay Area where I'm from, there's a good chance someone that's working at the Gap, they'll end up at Levi Strauss, or they'll end up at Williams-Sonoma, or they'll end up at Macy's, right? So if you keep those great relationships, that pays off. I know that's kind of the long road, but, through my career, I've closed multiple deals based on just making sure I kept those great relationships. Now, to the part where you talked about, starting off, you're strapped. You don't have use cases. You don't have an SDR. Fortunately, I had a consultant or a sales engineer that was kind of an expert in the e-com world. and she had some experience in the space with other solutions. If you guys are familiar with T-Leaf, they were acquired by IBM, and then everything that goes to IBM sometimes kind of gets gobbled up and disappears. But so we knew kind of the use case, the classic use cases for call them the 101s, right? Like the basic ones that you would use for qualitative analytics. So we were leading with some basic stuff with not, you know, not a lot of ammunition, like you said, but, you know, I would really stay involved even after deals closed with all the work that my consultants were doing. So if they had weekly calls where they're kind of, you know, working with just kind of being with in the trenches, right? And understanding, you know, I'm maintaining my relationship, but I still want to be in the trenches with the customer to understand what's going on and kind of pick up any golden nuggets of things they implemented or they found through the platform, right? Because it's supposed to be self-service. So sometimes you don't hear about those. So I really try to stay close to the customer, understand exactly, you know, what's been good, what's not, what's working. So I could take those little stories and then apply them to other deals that I'm working. I'll give I'm not sure if this will be too detailed, but I'll give one example that's really panned out for us over the last 5 years. If you guys are familiar with voice of customer, companies like Medallia, Opinion Lab, where someone could go, if you're frustrated on the website, right, a window pops up, you can leave feedback. And a lot of times all of it, if you even engage that, you say your site sucks, or I got a gray screen, screw you, I'm going to go to Amazon. Well, these big companies get that information. They don't know what to do with it. So one of the ideas we had is that we actually record every session. We don't record personal information, just so everyone knows, but we record every session and we block all PII. We don't want to even get into that mix. So we could tell how far someone scrolled down. It's literally like if you were looking over my shoulder and watching me navigate the screen. So what we have the ability to do, and I talking to our team, is like, what if we were able to tie a recording to every single feedback that someone left on the site? Then what if we were able to then, because we have that data, if we could just marry that somehow in the back end, that could then give us the ability to say, okay, now tell me how many people had that same experience and did not leave feedback, and tell me what that is. And I think a lot of us could say we've been super frustrated with the site and walked away and never let feedback. They'll never know that. So that was just a little use case. And once I found that out and applied that to a customer and we got that integration going, I used the hell out of that. And that's become our go-to. You know, there's a bunch of those kind of things, but that's one example of like a use case. Once I found something that was like mission critical that could drive a ton of value on something that they didn't have eyes on, I laid into that. But really it's going back to be it as close as possible to your customer, even after you sell. And I know that depending on the role, a lot of the times you close deals and then you're supposed to move on and not manage them. And I've been in that role too. I still try to stay close to my account manager in those cases where like, hey, how are things going? You know, kind of still keep that relationship with that executive. I never want to just dump that off to the account manager, even if I'm not involved, even if I don't get compensated. That's someone that you know that down the road they could go somewhere else and you could take advantage of that relationship. So,
good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Omar, for the question.
Don't rely on a BDR.
Don't rely
Never
on
do.
BDR. That's right. Yeah. Somebody asked me the other day about my faith in humanity, and I said, it's not so much that I don't trust humans, I just have a lot more faith in myself than anybody else. So, Sanjay, let's go to you, man. You ready?
Yeah. Hey guys.
Hey, bud.
Thanks for joining us, Tony. The question
absolutely.
I was going to ask was actually kind of already answered by you. It was really just how to get big enterprise to listen to you if you're kind of an outsider trying to come in and help them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going in cold, I mean, the big thing, that's one of the things why I kind of, you know, not to knock BDRs, but if you have a BDR, you really need them attached to your hip, right, to understand what the messaging is, because you don't want them blasting an enterprise customer if that's your one shot. And I got this annoying person from Content Square that keeps contacting me. So, and with like stock messaging, like that'll not work. I've noticed back in the day, you could just dial for dollars. That kind of went away. I think there's still the art of like, you could catch someone by surprise on the phone nowadays. I think it's kind of coming back a little bit, but really is any kind of, and I think this is, everyone knows this, it's like, try to be as relevant as possible to who you're reaching out to, try to find connections. I've been trying to get to, for me, I'll give the example of Disney Plus. I've been trying to crack into the VP of product. No luck. Literally no one from Disney Plus is responding to me. I tried LinkedIn campaigns and having my executives send messages. Then I finally found one executive. It was just dumb luck, but I'm like, oh, he goes to Ohio State. I know my VP of Global Services went to Ohio State. Maybe he could come like crack a joke about Ohio and get a hold of him somehow that way. And it worked, right? I always try that relationship angle before anything. Yes, go blue. Look at that. So yeah, it's, the relationship angle is going to be your best bet to get into these enterprise. Like goes back to what I said, if you build those relationships, going back and looking at someone's connections, if they're open on LinkedIn, an executive would say, hey, do you know this person? And if you have that relationships, a lot of the times they'll reach out for you. So I think that is key in that process for sure.
Good stuff, Tony. Let's go to Victoria. There, Victoria.
Hey guys, great to see everyone.
Hi.
I had kind of a similar question, but Tony, could you share a little bit more about your strategies for really reaching those C-level executives, perhaps, and kind of what your go-to approach is, I guess? Is it usually just trying to build those relationships right away, or is it something else?
But like super tactical, maybe, Tony. Like, let's pretend big stretch. Pretend I'm a corporate executive at Disney, which is about the most opposite thing that would ever happen on earth. Right? How do you get my attention? Like, what's the message, right? What's the one-liner?
And are we talking more? Yeah, are we talking like I'm Disney's a customer and I'm kind of looking to expand, or going in cold, never sold to them at all?
Yeah, brand new account.
Brand new account. Like I said, I don't have, like, for messaging sake, I don't have an angle where I would go straight in at the person unless it's trying to find something, an article on them. But my angle has always been using my relationships. One example recently, I'll give you this. One of my close executive contacts at the Gap left, and she's been trying to find a new job. And I'm always, whenever someone leaves, I'm always trying to help them. Like, hey, maybe I can help you with my network. It doesn't always work out. Every once in a while it does. But we were trying to get into another account, and she knew the executive there, and I knew they were hiring. So in this case, I kind of led her in that direction. She kind of got involved in the hiring process and then really pushed our brand in there and say, hey, you need to look at Content Square. So I've played angles like that, but just straightforward. Like, if you're trying to go in cold, you really have to understand if there's a need there. If you get really tactical in my space, I will go in and try to find anything that's relevant. For instance, if they're using, the example I gave of the VOC, right? Are they using a different solution that we could integrate that could bring more value to them? Something I know they have a gap they might not have realized. So dialing into that, or, something like that, I think has been useful for me, is just kind of understanding what they're using and how we can bring more value, and then honing in on that as much as possible is an angle. But for me, where I've been successful in my career is it's building out the relationships that will make those introductions a lot easier for me, which I know it takes time as well.
Yeah. I've talked a lot recently about leveraging relationships to cut the line, is the phrase that I've been using, right? Just like cut in front of all these other people. I've used it in the context of job search and career and whatnot, but like, you're sort of doing that in the way that you're trying to foster relationships way prior to actually trying to sell people. So there's something going on there before you even start trying to talk to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a good question from Patrick. Patrick Downey, are you ready?
Yo.
There
What's
he
going
is.
on, everybody?
What's up, Patrick?
Yo, Tony, I was just curious a little bit about, it sounds like you got experience both on like the new business side of things as well as like growth and expansion. So I was just curious on like talk a little bit about the differences between the two and share your experience there.
Yeah, I mean, historically, I've been just a hunter, and once I closed, I moved on, right? And while I'm as super competitive and love doing that, you know, since I came over to Content Square in the last 5 years, kind of being in this hybrid role, I've actually liked it. I've always been like anti-account manager, right? Like I don't want to manage accounts. That's so easy, right? And then this last 5 years, I've really kind of liked fostering those relationships and leveraging them and kind of, you know, I'm a people person. Once you get to know me, like it's just one of those things. And I've also learned that I might not be the slickest presenter, the slickest, you know, Scott in college, I'm like, Scott could fill like, the teacher said to write a 20-page paper, he could fill it with fluff. I'd be done to the point in one page, and he could fill it in forever. So but I've learned that I'm good with relationships. People trust me, and it's just something that I've kind of, and I try to be trustworthy, you know, and tell the truth and not be that sales guy. But I've learned to really enjoy more of this hybrid role where it's kind of these accounts where it's kind of new business within an existing business kind of relationship. So like a Disney or a Home Depot, where, you know, maybe the US is our customer, but I want to expand to Canada. I want to expand to Home Depot Pro. And so I like that ability to create that weekly cadence with someone where it's fun. It makes work fun. You build relationships. You almost talk about family. You get together. Well, not anymore, but used to get together, right? So I think moving forward, wherever I end up, I really think I would like to kind of continue in this hybrid role. But it's just as difficult because you have to renew. And then now, and if you're enterprise sales, I don't know if anyone, you know, no software is perfect. There's headaches left and right. I've never worked for something that has like, oh yeah, we have no issues here with our platform. It's fine. But so there's that aspect of account management that some people cannot handle all the headaches and the noise, and it distracts them too much from growing accounts. While you're a hunter, you really don't worry about that. You know, you have the use cases, you go after stuff. It's less headaches on that aspect. But I just find it more rewarding to build those relationships and take a Disney from 50K or T-Mobile was at 100K, and to build those up to 7-figure deals. I almost take pride in those kind of things. So I don't know. I don't know if that helps a little bit, but if you can land a hybrid role, that to me is like the dream job, right? You know, you have a few accounts and then just keep growing those as much as you can.
Tony, do you get paid on your expansion revenue or only on net new MRR on deals like that you bring in?
So our company, because we recently, and this stays in the Patreon, right? I'm just making.
That's right. It goes nowhere.
It goes
Circle
nowhere.
of trust, right?
So, fortunately, BlackRock, which is public knowledge, they deposited $190 million in our account right at the beginning of COVID. And whenever BlackRock gets involved, it means there's an exit plan in the next 2 years, one way or another. They're not around. They're not here to mess around. They're putting fuel to the fire. And so, where was I going? Sorry, what was the question again, John? I totally just lost track there.
It was a little personal, but I was just curious.
It's tequila.
You said you take pride in growing the accounts, but a lot of times, you know, sales leaders aren't incentivized for that type of stuff.
Yes,
so I was more kind of curious if your
yeah.
incentives were aligned with it, you know?
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. Yeah. So basically, before we got incentivized a lot more for renewals, and now they dropped that down. So I'll be completely transparent. It's 5% for a renewal for me, right? Which 5% on $1 million, not bad. If you do a 2-year deal, they up that to 8.5. But then anything on top of that 2-year deal, like if your ACV is 500,000, and if I bring in Disney Plus, they're going to give me 14.5%. So if Disney Plus is $1 million deal, which it can be because of the amount of traffic they have to do, we charge by traffic on the site. That's a nice little payday. So that's kind of what, you get incentivized to really grow. They're like, we want growth. Upsell is more important than, well, retention is always important, but they're paying us on upsell like nobody's business.
That's because they're headed towards an exit, and post-sale revenue is actually more valuable towards the valuation of the company than the initial, first-time revenue. That's why they're emphasizing that.
Yes, and then also they don't, there were some account managers that were just coasting the last 3 years, and they were just renewing flat. And when you have, call it a Bank of America or Enterprise would be a good deal. Bank of America is a good one. Only spending $80,000 a year with you, and you're just renewing them flat. That's a loss. Like you should be fired if you can't take Bank of America above 5 figures. So they were talking about even going lower, but we kind of pushed back on that. But yeah, it's the big incentive is to upsell. So.
All right, let's go to Mr. 1942. David Fox has a question.
It's kind of been building up to this, actually. As I look at, you've got this hybrid role. You're looking at lots of properties, lots of, companies in a portfolio, and you've got this LTV mindset, but you've got this net dollar retention as well. Can you kind of talk about what's that formula for not undervaluing what you bring to the table for them? So you could just say, let's just get this deal done. It could be $1 million, but the reality is it might be worth 5 million, or the LTV could be 5 million, and BlackRock, et cetera, are looking for net dollar retention as well, expansion on top of. Can you talk a little bit more about the ingredients or recipe to your success? Hopefully that made sense.
I'm not sure. So like undervalued. Yeah.
Yes. Let's say, you got Disney, you see all the different entities there. In your mind, the business case and the value proposition could be 20 million.
Yeah.
And you're trying the best you can to capture the 20. And you also know that they're going to take baby steps because they're going to do this, and then they're going to do another one, then another, and then they've acquired some company off in APAC. And so you're looking to get them at some point. How do you ensure that you're not leaving money on the table?
Yeah, I mean, it's with Disney. So my colleague has done that with Microsoft, and he went in and was able to get it all at once, and he just closed a $7 million with Microsoft. There were special circumstances on that, but he was able to get there. With Disney, you're right, and part of what I've negotiated. The one thing I did do with Disney that helps my cause is last year I had if you ever deal with Disney legal, it's chaos, but once you get it done, it's magical.
That's for you, Alexine. Sorry.
Yeah.
Alexine is here, and she's
I've had to deal with Amazon legal.
Disney legal. So.
I had to deal once with Amazon because of their legal. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's frustrating, but I finally have a global MSA in place with Disney that applies to everything under the Disney umbrella, and it took a long time to get there. And so with that, they also, in exchange for that, there's a lot of negotiated rates already established, so economy of scale. So me going to Disney Plus, while if it was a net new deal, I probably could get more, but because Disney's spent X amount already with us, they expect that the cost to go down over time.
Right.
So but that also cuts the red tape on getting deals done. So I do sacrifice, I think, ACV on some of these deals, but the ability to reach out and finally get someone's attention, and then if have the right executive connect with the other one, and if we work together, they know each other. It allows me, and we're pretty high up. We're probably just on the global side, we're probably two or three below Bob Chapek, where they know who we are. So Talik, if that name rings a bell, he's like executive vice president over global technologies. So we're at that level. So that lends a lot of weight when we're talking to any group, because he'll validate and give us a thumbs up. So, I mean, it's one of them last year where we went in there to an executive for Shop Disney last year. He didn't even bother checking with any of the other groups globally. He's like, I have the budget here. And then he says, guys, here it is. Use this. We're driving a ton of value already with these groups. I want you to use this. So I'm trying to do that now with Shanghai and a few others. But that's kind of, I don't know if that helps answer your question, but it does. Yeah, you do lose a little bit of revenue, but I think it also, man, it cuts away a lot of headache and the sales cycle is a lot shorter.
It's that challenge of you've got a CFO who's looking at, he knows exactly, or she knows exactly holistically what this could represent. And they're already thinking from that vantage. And you're like, well, hold on a second. Your commitment is only baby steps. So I can't like give you 99% off theoretically when you're committing to this, but we'll build up to that volume kind of.
Yeah, now, exactly. Now the flip side, Walmart is not fully developed and I'm still working on getting them globally and all their different brands, but I'm closing Canada right now and I'm actually getting that at a much higher ACV than if we had a global MSA in place, and we don't. I just have like Mexico and then Sam's Club US. So we're still kind of building that out, but I haven't been able to get call it the Walmart Labs global MSA in place where we become the standard across all brands. And while that'll bring down the deal, right now I'm actually seeing good sized deals, but at some point when I get the mothership on board, while it'll grow, you know, I don't know how big it'll get. But yeah, it's a different approach.
Okay.
Great question, David. Let's go to Nehemiah.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Tony, yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay, thanks. Tony, this is very interesting. And Scott, these have been interesting to sit in because I'm not in the SaaS world. I'm in the equipment world, industrial equipment. So completely different sales cycle, completely different sale values. So everything I listen and pick up everything that I can and apply it to my current. So my question for you is, I'm going to take some step back. You guys are getting into the weeds into some really cool stuff, but I'm going to take a step back to where you mentioned you moved into the hunter role. That's primarily what you were doing. And I was kind of checking out your experience on LinkedIn, and with your sales experience and your sales management experience, talk to me about moving from an account management or even a sales manager role back into that hunter role. You can hear from the way that I worded that, I see the hunter role as kind of a lesser desirable position than a sales manager or account manager role. And
well, yeah, I never, you know, some of these titles, I'll say, we all see those titles. Doesn't mean I actually managed anyone. There was no one reporting directly to me.
Right. This is a long-standing debate and argument that Tony and I have had, by the way, for a long time.
Yeah, he wants me to get in management, and I'm like, I like just being responsible for my own number, and I could go run 100 miles if I'm hitting my number. My boss doesn't care. You know, it's but back to, I mean, I guess. So I don't know if that like that like puts a downer on your question, but like the hunter role for me, I don't know if that also helps answer, but yeah, I like the hunter role. It was something where I started off. I was inside sales, and I was basically, the company I worked for was like, I guess I started on I'm not sure if this is a good story or not, but I'll go down the path here. I worked for a company back in early 2000 that invented the first online reverse auction platform for negotiating hotel room rates for Fortune 100 companies or 500. So if you're a Fortune 500 and you want to have all your rates negotiated for all the hotels across the country, right? IBM. You want to be, instead of sending out faxes back in the day, they had this thing called the internet that they could hop on and negotiate in a matter of hour, have all their rates negotiated. So it was doing really awesome. And I was an inside sales rep. And then they didn't have enough. I was feeding leads to them and to the sales reps to start working the full cycle, and they couldn't handle them. Say, hey, Tony, can you do the demo for me? So I started doing demos, and then they said, hey, can you just work some of these smaller deals? So then I got into that full cycle hunter deal, and then I started doing all that. So I took pride in that, and I always will. But when you're talking about, like, I don't think I would ever get into management, and sometimes I think, you know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but I still love the challenge, and I don't know if I just want to go back to managing people, if that makes any sense. It just, to me, there's too many variables there that I want to work with right now that I'd want to, you know, deal with.
Maybe I can clarify. And I mean, yeah. I'm technically a sales manager, but I don't manage any people. I just manage a region, right? Or an industry.
Yeah.
So what I think I'm touching on exactly what you got into. And you're moving kind of into that account management role where you're trying to build out versus, bring in. And a lot of times that's in a lot of companies, that's more of a more valuable role, I guess, for kind of the more senior salespeople than maybe that hunter role. That role is kind of that introductory, hey, get you out there. So a lot of what I'm interested in hearing is, like, what are your career expectations when you move back into a hunter role after having all those experiences, your salary expectations and so on?
Yeah, I won't. Like, I think I'm in a position, currently I'm in a position where I could kind of pick where I want to go with that kind of stuff, but I'll be very picky in what I select. I think you saw my LinkedIn. I don't hop at all. I tend to stick around, and I'm very loyal, and I want to see things through. I like to win. And so I will try to avoid that unless it was, obviously early. If I go back to an early stage company, you're going to wear multiple hats. So I don't mind if that was the case, but I've really found a niche into what I like, what I do, and I do really well, which is manage a handful of strategic accounts and not only grow that, but continue to renew that. And, my CEO trusts me with the biggest brands in our company. So, I want to take that and create that role somewhere else down the road. But if it involves being a hunter to start, I would do that too, obviously. I like the startup world. My company right now is getting to that uncomfortable stage where I'm like, it's getting too big. We're over 600 employees. So it's like, I'm not going to jump ship, but because we're so close. But at the same time, I'm like, I miss those days when I was the first group of outside sales reps hired, employee. When I worked at a company called Bronto Software, I was literally the first outside sales rep and top 30 employee at the company. To see that grow and get acquired by NetSuite and then Oracle, that was a fun ride. But then once it got acquired by NetSuite, that allure, that small company vibe that I love just kind of went away. So I think I'll always stick to that and never work for a big company though.
Speaking my language, other than the argument that Tony and I have had forever, by the way, is less about like what kind of work-life balance you want to have or what your actual role is and whatnot. Like at this point, I'm always teasing and pushing Tony towards leadership because I'm like, dude, you could grow an entire enterprise sales org and have equity in the company and get a multi-million-dollar pop. And as long as you stay in your situation where you are now, that might not happen. So that's just me.
Well,
that's me digging at you.
They're throwing some more shares at me recently, so
yeah. Listen,
but nothing like a VP. I get it.
Listen, I have dressed you down over the shares math many times before. I won't do it. I won't do it again publicly. Nat, let's go to Nat. Nat has a great question.
Perfect timing here. So hey, NetSuite is still a cozy culture company, and I still work there, Tony. I know what you mean.
But Bronto, Bronto, the green dinosaur disappeared.
Well, yeah, it's structured a little differently today within NetSuite.
Yeah.
The Bronto reps kind of operate, but that's one of the reasons I am with NetSuite. It still has a cozy culture, and then kind of enjoying every day out here. So Bronto, B2C and B2B marketing is still close to my heart. I used to sell that stuff in early days when I started Oracle, but anyway, that's not my question here. I won't waste a lot of time here. So yeah, my question was, I'm into account management as well here at NetSuite. Whatever you're saying today kind of resonates with me, with my role. Exciting times. I have couple of accounts who are, corporate in nature, having subsidiaries in place, and I'm trying to break into those subsidiaries. But parent company uses Oracle, not NetSuite. Some of the subsidiaries are using NetSuite, and I'm trying to break that and get into other subsidiaries within that parent company. However, the parent company is not willing to broker the introduction. Hey, feel free to reach out. to so many subsidiaries. Here's your document. Here's the list of subsidiaries that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was
you're saying. The
wondering.
parent company. So you're trying to get into the subsidiaries, but the parent company is just your contacts there. The parent company are not willing to broker an introduction at all.
No, yeah. So parent company doesn't want to broker an introduction into a huge list of subsidiaries that they have. And I am pretty interested to see if 2 subsidiaries are using NetSuite, why not 10 more? Is what my question is, and how do I kind of break into that?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one. So you're trying, yeah, it's because you're not getting the help from the mothership to get into their to the subsidiaries. But have you had any success going straight to the subsidiaries?
Well, the list is huge, and I need to kind of do my own homework on where do I start.
Yeah, I mean, what I would always, I mean, if you could get someone there in one of those small subsidiaries to, take the bait, right, and build a use case with them that you could go take back to the mothership, say, hey, listen here, we're doing this value. We could do this now with all these subsidiaries. Is there any way we could, that would be one angle. Are you also siloed at the parent company?
I am siloed
at
the parent company.
Yeah, so that's a big thing I try to avoid is, not only if that person leaves, you're, shit out of luck sometimes, but is to have multiple executives that are benefiting from whatever you're selling them, right? At the Gap, I had I don't know if you guys remember seeing in the news, right, where they were talking about Old Navy was going to split, then they didn't split, and it was just this back and forth, and the culture was a disaster, and the whole company was splitting up. And meanwhile, people are like, this culture sucks. I'm going to leave. I'm going to go work somewhere else. And so one of my main champions left. The person below them left. And I was like, if I didn't have that relationship with a couple people over and a couple people over this way, I could have lost that, that deal. So, I mean, that's the big thing I would say is, that's the one thing I would say out of all this, whether it helps or not, is to try to build out those relationships within the mothership and make sure that you have multiple people you could go to, because if one person doesn't want to do an intro, maybe someone else will. I've had that in Disney, right? I've reached out to some of these executives that, hey, can you help broker an introduction? And they're like, no. So I go to the next executive over, like, hey, would you mind doing this? Yeah, I think I know someone over there. That's kind of helped me, because you're going to have those people that just don't want to help. But if you have those relationships established across and not siloed, it saves the account. Because that would be the one advice I would suggest, Yeah. But definitely, since you don't have that and you're still building that, I would go back to trying to break in a couple of those smaller subsidiaries. While that wouldn't be a big win, it's at least you're building a use case with them to take back and say, hey, we're driving value. Look what we could do here. Let's create a standard across the board.
Right. So. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a piece of advice.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Nat. Josh, are you ready? Josh Kosowski.
I am.
Hey, bud. Here we go.
I'm here. Thanks, you guys. Hey, Tony. So Tony, my question's around, I've heard Scott talk a lot about transactional sales. I've done transactional sales. I've been in roles like you where I'm kind of the hunter farmer, never with enterprise. I've done enterprise sales, and I'm at that crossroads now where I'm looking at some opportunities that are kind of in both camps. And I'm just curious, like, I don't know if you've experienced more of the transactional sale or if you've always been enterprise, but I'm trying to, just kind of see. I mean, my first experience with enterprise was definitely very challenging, per se, and it's definitely a huge difference, not having as many sales. And just want to see, like, if you have a perspective on both, or if you don't, then just kind of what you like or don't like about enterprise sales.
No, I absolutely do. I mean, that's a great question. It's my background was more of mid-market, repeatable and predictable, right? So when we talked about Bronto software, I started off there, you know, our deals were only 25K. By the time I left, you know, we had a solution that was robust enough where we were doing 7-figure deals. And that was still to mid-market solutions. Obviously, it was based off number of emails sending. So if you had someone that sent a ton of emails, it's going to cost more. But I really, the transition from something like that, that was like while the deals started getting bigger at Bronto, like I wouldn't still that was more transactional in a way, right? The deal cycles were shorter than what I'm experiencing now, but it was repeatable and predictable, right? I knew if I made X amount of dials and I did X amount of demos and I had a pipeline at X amount, that I should hit my number. And then the gravy on top was the SDR leads. And then typically I'd have one whale that would close every couple quarters, right? So I hit my number consistently and made President's Club every year. And you knew the math. I think it was a little easier. When you get into enterprise sales, you don't want to live or die by the big deal, but there's a little bit of that, like, oh my gosh, you have this huge number in front of you and you don't have that many deals. So if one of those slip, you're fucked in a way. And so there's that pressure, but at the same time, it's, man, you close a 7-figure deal, you're sitting pretty, like it's a huge commission check. So it's, it's one of those things where,
is there any pipeline to deal equation that makes sense at your level, Tony? Like if you have like a $10 million annual quota, are you like, okay, I got to try my best to get 50 in my pipeline? Is any of that math make sense, or is it all?
It's a little looser, I would say. I think you can try to manage towards that. Hopefully you don't get into these, like where I'm at right now, for the people that are just hunters at our company, they have these insane quotas because BlackRock's coming in and they're hiring a bunch of sales reps to go after new business. So they're in a tough spot. But in general, if you're at a company kind of early stages or just kind of starting to mature and you have a reasonable quota, and I think that's a whole other topic Scott likes to talk about, but I think you could, so early days Content Square, the quota for hunters was reasonable, and you can kind of map it out based on the average size deal, what I needed to do, but it wasn't that stable of deals that you would see in a transactional style selling. So Bronto was kind of like the evolution. Before that, I think, I forget who was talking about selling more hardware stuff. That was transactional. Like I'd pick up the phone, call, hey, do you need to buy computer locks? Yeah, actually we do. Okay. Then just a little bit later, boom, I'd have a PO a week later or something like that. Those were quick sales cycles. Then Bronto became kind of like that 3 to 8 month sales cycle. And now, I mean, I've had 2-year sales cycles. And when I closed Costco, it took me 2 years from my first meeting until they finally pulled the trigger. So you have to be patient. You have to develop it's more relationship based, and creating that trust and being a thought leader for them and showing the value. And that takes time. But once you land those deals, and then that's why I like that expansion ability. If you land, you have them, they trust you, you're driving value. Yeah.
It's so insane to consider a 2-year sales cycle. That's just like so beyond my scope of knowing what that's like. 2/3 of my normal job. If I take a job it's for 3 years, and 2 years is like 2/3 of it to work on one account. It's like, holy cow, brutal, man.
But Josh, to one other thing, just to note, your base salary is a lot higher. So they understand that, like, because of those sales cycles, you'll get the higher base.
Yeah. Let's go to.
Or you should demand it.
Yeah. Let's go to Seth. Seth, you're next in the queue. If you're here still.
Thank you, Scott.
There you are.
Yes. Tony, so I'm curious, what is your process like for, you've got a deal that, you've delivered the agreement, you've got a deal on the table, and, just really tactical, you deliver it, you're waiting kind of for the internal processes as far as going through the legal, going, to get the final signature. It just kind of stalls out for one degree or another. And I'm curious what your tactics are to kind of restart that communication and get that deal to the final stages. You can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is, first off, if I'm talking to my business contact or my champion on the business side and this gets put into legal, first off, I want to know who that person is in legal, get an introduction, develop a procurement, develop a relationship there if I can, meet with them in person if I can. Nowadays you can't. But really establish that relationship there so there's not that, hey, business contact, what's the status in legal, right? Oh, let me go check. You want to avoid that and try to, and sometimes you can't, but if you could somehow create that connection with the legal and procurement person, and then also I always try to demand a weekly cadence call to make sure we're tracking. That's a biggie for me. Like I always do that because things will slip. They'll won't have time to meet. And if they don't want to do that, that's kind of a red flag, but I'm kind of doing it at different angles. So one will be, obviously I have my business contact, that's my relationship, the weekly cadence, hopefully with legal. I also have my executives or my CEO tag teaming on top as well. And then kind of keeping the pressure on all angles. Hey, hey, I understand my team is working here. So I don't try to we go back to being siloed, right? You never want to be siloed. You never want to win or lose a deal by yourself, because if you lose a deal by yourself, that's a big no-no. But I always try to kind of keeping those, if I put the calendar invite on there and I have a weekly cadence with that legal person, I think that's huge for me. Like I said, having multiple angles where we're constantly checking in, is the deal moving? Are we progressing? Is there anything that we're missing? There's the usual, for me, it's like security check, the performance on the tag. There's several check boxes that I know are things that pop up in these big enterprise deals. So I try to get ahead of those as quickly as possible. I'll even throw in when we are kind of like you talked about before, even the contract, I sometimes if I feel like we're in a good position, I'm like, hey, here's our MSA if you want to pass it on to your legal to start that process. I know you're still vetting out our kind of, in my case, the tag to make sure it's not going to bring down Walmart.com, right? So at a performance level, it's okay, but can we at least start this so we can meet the deadline or the date we're agreeing to? So I'll try to accelerate different steps that I know are going to come up as much as possible. But the biggie is just establishing, cadences with each of the people that are influencing the deal. If that helps at all.
Yeah, definitely. Man. And one last part. So when you talk about the you've got the executive working in parallel. Are they talking to this? Who are they talking to? The CEO.
It depends.
CEO
yeah, I haven't gotten hired. So at Home Depot, for example, I never got the CEO, but I got the CMO. The CMO was involved in my last deal, so he was in connection with my CEO. So CEO of Home Depot. So that was, and I met him briefly, shook the guy's hand at a cocktail event, but it was enough to at least broker an introduction to my CEO later on. So I made sure to attend that so I could try to, my goal was just at least to lock eyes with the guy once, and I was able to do that, and it was enough with the help of I had an executive champion already in there, but to broker the introduction to our CEO to create that relationship. That's something I always try to do, is bring in those executives as much as possible and create those relationships as well.
Let's go to Alex Smith.
Tony, man, this is awesome information. Thank you so much. I'm not finding information like this on any other platform, so thanks for doing this, and thanks, Scott, for bringing it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I am fascinated about ultra running and all this. I read Finding Ultra by Rich Roll about a year ago. I don't know if you know that book, but it's similar to David Goggins. Yeah, just a dude that kind of just found another tank. His just what he could do. He found this other thing. So I'm curious, how ultra running has helped you with sales, maybe in terms of mindset and maybe even planning, because it seems like you have taken this complex territory and complex problems and really kind of, I don't know if simplified is the right word, but, broken it down into chunks that's easier to manage. So yeah, just really curious what that's done for you. And if you have a quote you love to live by or anything, mindset wise? Love to hear it.
I don't know if I'm not the quote kind of guy, but it definitely, I would say there is a big correlation. I mean, definitely ultra running into what I do now. I mean, Scott's known me as, I mean, I am super competitive. At practice in college, I was the first one out there running the sprints, doing everything I had to do, serving extra tennis balls to get my serve down. I mean, I was always trying to be the best at whatever I was doing. But ultra running, if you think about it, you're not just getting off the couch and run 100 miles. You can probably get off the couch and do a 5K or, you know, cover a mile, whatever it might be. But it takes a lot of work and practice and discipline and showing up every single day to be prepared to toe the line and to knock out something as big as, you know, a 50 or 100-mile race. I mean, it takes months and months of preparations. It's sacrifice, right? So I have 2 little ones. I'm not going to give up my Saturday morning with them. So I make sure I don't waste my time in front of the TV Friday night, or what, you know, we're not going out nowadays, but then I'm up at 3:30 and out the door, and I'm back at 8:30 putting bacon in the oven for them, right? So knock out a 5-hour run in the dark in the morning. Now, it also helps that my wife is an ultra runner, so it kind of, you know, there's times where midday runs do occur, but for the most part, I really don't want to sacrifice what I have with my family. So there's other sacrifices that I make. And if you're not disciplined, it doesn't work out. And it's the same thing with these, maybe that's why I've kind of gravitated to these large complex deals. And I love just the whole process of it, and just the little things that each day there's a little milestone, you chip down something to then finally get that big deal. And and it's not so much the commission check. Yeah, I love that, but just that accomplishment of, like, we didn't have President's Club this year at my company. And I was like, that meant more to me just to be acknowledged and to go to President's Club than actually the money behind it in a way. I don't know if that it makes sense or not, but I get a kick out of like these long sales cycles, and it's the same thing with ultra running. And it's just the discipline behind it. So.
Can I follow up real quick?
It's that patience, man.
Yeah.
That patience and discipline to stick with a
2-3
year sales cycle. Yeah.
Tony, do you plan out your day like super religiously, and week and month and year? Or how does that look?
Guy. Look at what's behind this guy. He's got the most organized garage situation of all time. Look at these bins.
Oh, wait. No.
Come on, man.
Okay, let's tilt it over to the mess. Tilt it over to the mess.
I like the tequila. That's
the children's section. Okay, this is the Tony section.
It is.
I've known you long enough to know that this is the Tony section. All the bins are the same. They're organized. Yeah, well done. Answer his question.
I don't know if I'd go far. Yeah, I don't know if I'd go far as saying my year is organized. Obviously, you do, when you're planning out your calendar for ultra running events, you know, there's a buildup. So there's certain milestones to, you know, typically the hundreds are done in the summer just because there's more daylight and you're not running in the rain, or which sometimes happens. But the lead up to that, there's probably a 100K race that you're doing, which is 62 miles roughly. And then there's a 50-mile race, and then there's a 50K at the beginning of the year. You kind of just progress until you hit the big one. And then, so there is some structure with that. But in general, on a daily basis, there is structure, or at least a weekly basis. I'll kind of map out what I have between my wife and I, because she's up at 5 a.m. as well. So if she's going to start her workout at 5:30 and I want to get a run in and I know I have a busy work day, I'll hop out of bed at 4 a.m. and knock it out so that she's home with the kids. And so that when I come back at 5:30, she's doing her workout. I'm inside just in case the kids wake up and I'm getting breakfast ready. So there's routines on a daily basis that kind of, I would say I follow. But like right now, all my runs I know are morning because it's end of year, right? It's not end of quarter. It's right now, it's a fire drill. So like, if I want to make sure I don't miss my run, because there's going to be all kinds of curveballs throughout the day, to avoid those, I'm just 4 a.m. Let's go. It's a sacrifice I make because I'm training for something right now. But if I wasn't, obviously, you know, I'd have a little bit more flexibility in there. But what I eat as well, planning out meals, prepping, that saves me time. You know, everything I can to minimize waste of time, I do, especially when there's a big event or I know there's a lot going on in my life. So but not super strict. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not super strict, but the critical piece there is like everything you can do to not waste time. You know what I mean? Like you and I in particular have always been like so efficient in thinking of this kind of thing and like trying to plan and plot things out in advance. Like Jill just typed super well organized. Like again, look at the bins behind this guy. Super well organized is an understatement. Okay. So I learned a lot of my efficiency and organizational skills from Tony. So let's go to Jill. Jill, are you ready?
Hey there, Tony. It's been a great conversation. Really appreciate your insights. So my question is, I sell a digital reward software platform into companies that want to give their customers thank you gifts like movie streaming, music downloads, ebooks, audiobooks, all kind of digital entertainment delivered instantly. And a lot of times I'll have companies call me because they've seen our products in some of the lotteries. We do 10-state lotteries, some hotel chains, airlines, things like that. And they'll call me and they'll be super excited. We need digital rewards. All we have is gift cards and we need this stuff. And they seem excited. And then we have several conversations and then all of a sudden they go dark. And I might get a cryptic response. Some of the team didn't really love the user journey. And then when I try to dig deeper to find out, well, what exactly, because we're around the world, depending on which product you're using, the user journey is slightly different, right? If you're streaming a movie versus downloading a book, obviously there's going to be a couple more clicks. But how do you extract that information so that you can see if you're even using it properly, or if it's something we can fix because we are, enterprise level, we can make any changes. But in some cases, they kind of ghost you after, they're the ones that, wanted the solution. So
you're saying you're kind of starting off with a prospect, right? They're not using your solution and first meeting goes really well. There's a lot of they're saying all the nice things, you're hearing the positives, and like you have next steps.
They ask for the contract and everything, discuss price, and then something stops around, because I send sample voucher codes to their team. And a lot of times I'm thinking maybe I should just do the demo myself because people are, they're lazy, even though through the service, everything is prompted to you. Like if you need a reader for your ebook, it shows. So
you're saying you send out like a virtual demo for them to just review it by themselves?
Well, yeah, a lot of times I do send that, but a lot of times they don't want that. They want me to send codes for their team to review, and then they won't get back to me with what it was, where it fell apart. So do you have any suggestions?
I was just kidding. Yeah, my experience is I try to deliver the message as much as possible, or the demo or whatever it might be. Sending information over and just having them interpret it leaves up, it's just, you're not reading the room. You're just hoping they got it and maybe they didn't, like the true value in what you're offering. I try to avoid that as much as possible. I know sometimes that's kind of the way it plays out. They just say, hey, I don't have time. But, I mean, I hate to say this, but maybe if they don't have time, then maybe they're not that serious in a way. They're just kind of wanting to do their homework.
Could be. But I wish I knew. It would really help me to direct things. But it's happened a few times in the last month or two, and it's kind of, it stymies me a little bit because.
And so you're even sending price. Are you sending pricing without reviewing too, just over email?
No, we talk about the price. They asked me about the pricing, and we talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So the pricing is never the obstacle. It's more.
That's nice.
I know, something that maybe.
Maybe you need to raise that was my problem. Jill.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So
somebody told me that a long time ago. If pricing's never the issue, you should raise your prices.
Yeah, really? Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a 12-year-old quote from a I think it was a VC that I talked to back in the Bay Area like 12 years ago. He said, because I was like saying, well, pricing's not the issue with us. And he's like, well, if pricing's not the issue, you should probably raise your prices.
Yeah.
Never forgot that.
I mean, and Jill, I don't know if, I mean, my world, if I were to send over something canned to them, that's just generic. Where I would probably spend time is really, well,
it's
yeah.
after the call, but it is
is
generic to their team. You're probably right. It is generic.
Yeah, so it's really understanding that. So yeah, what I've done that is where I'm trying to go into different groups is like I understand the main I'll talk to like call it the business champion, the guy that's interested initially, and he has a team. I said, well, let's bring your team on the call and let's hear what their use cases are, and let's dive into those a little bit more and see if we could address those over the call. Versus because what maybe was a hot button for the guy you were talking to initially, or the initial person, it might not be a hot button for the rest of the team, potentially.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let's, I'm trying to squeeze the last few questions and we got like 10, 15 minutes left or so. Let's go to John Stern. John's got a question for you, Tony.
Hey, Tony, thanks a lot. It's been awesome.
In the meantime, real quick, John, before you get going, in the meantime, I'm gonna drop Tony's LinkedIn information in the chat here, so everybody should connect with him. If we don't get to any questions,
and thanks for everyone. And thanks everyone for adding.
Yeah, ask him the questions offline. I'm sure he'll get back to you. So, okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah, so Tony, I was curious two things. One, it sounds like, the basis of everything you're doing is building strong relationships. And I was kind of curious, I have a Brazilian wife. First, if you think that being multicultural helps you in building these relationships or being Brasileiro, or if that's just you as a person. And secondly, you and Scott were college teammates, I guess, for tennis. This is for both of you. Was there anything that you saw in each other, like playing sports or while you were competing, that, you knew that they were going to be successful in business like you both have been? I mean, obviously you already said Tony's super organized and has a drive to be the best, but I'm curious if both of you saw something else in the other that you knew that they were going to be number one kind of at whatever you chose to do. And if you want to throw an embarrassing story in there, you can, because I have to pay Scott, I guess, if you do that, but we're all up for that also.
You want me to go first, Scott, or you?
No, you definitely go first, man. They don't want to listen to me talk. They're here for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with like kind of my back. Well, I'll start with first on Scott. He's always been one that, let's put it this way, it's kind of embarrassing, right? Being in the dorms where we went to school is actually cooler than being off campus because all the athletes were there. It's a small little Catholic school that we went to. But if you wanted to hang out with Scott, you had to go Scott wasn't going to come hang out with you, right? Like everyone went to go hang out with Scott. And so he was kind of the leader of the pack. He was the captain of the soccer team, captain of the tennis team. I did make co-captain one year, so he was on the throne by himself. But I always knew he was going to be a leader in some way. His ability to write is far superior than mine, and one that I like. That's gonna take him somewhere. Which he wrote a book, so I think I got that one right. My background, I didn't even bring that up earlier. So yes, I'm half Brazilian. My dad was in the Army, so I was born in West Point, New York. And from there, my mom's Brazilian. But from there, I lived in North Carolina. I lived in Kansas. I lived in Texas, moved to Rio, moved to Brasilia, moved to DC, moved to Brasilia, went to California for college. And every summer I was in California because that's where my family's from. So as you can imagine, all of those moves, I don't have the childhood friend that lives down the street like Scott did, right? Which they're all my friends now too. But, it's one of those things I had to learn to meet new people. Part of my experience of living at the U.S. Embassy, or, my dad worked at the U.S. Embassy in Brazil, was that every president, every vice president, every secretary of state, every secretary of defense always makes one trip to Brazil in the 4 years they're in office. So I had the opportunity to meet pretty much all our presidents, got to even play tennis with George Bush Sr., play tennis with the ambassador of the United States alongside the ambassador of France and two other high officials. Like it was nothing, right? And I think all those experiences experiences really led me to be a people person, and then to just relationships come easy. And I think that's why I kind of fell into sales. I mean, I thought after the year after I graduated from college, my degree was international relations, focused on Brazilian economy. So I went immediately to go work for the State Department. I was a simultaneous translator for the head of the Agriculture Department of the United States. And his whole goal was to bring in McRibs down to Brazil, and he wanted to export American meat to Brazil. And I'm telling him, as we're meeting with they call it the Minister of Agriculture of Brazil, the head dude of agriculture, I'm like, I'm just a kid, right? I'm just like right out of college, say like, you're not going to be able, Mr. U.S. guy, bring American meat into Brazil. It's not going to happen. And so I'm here in the middle of this conversation, these guys trying to communicate. He doesn't speak any English. He sort of does. And so I just being in that environment, like, I didn't like working for the government. I'm like, I got to take these skill sets somewhere else. So that I came back to the Bay and got into software sales. And I just realized I was more of a people person, but I couldn't work for the government. So, but yeah, my dad wanted me to go work for the DEA.
I'll take a crack at part of your question, John. Twofold. The first part is Tony is the only one who could keep up with me in terms of my drive and my work ethic or whatever. And it was a little complicated for me because I was playing two sports. And so I always felt like Tony was ahead of me because he was ahead of me because he was able to play tennis like all year round. But as soon as my soccer season ended, it was like Tony and I going down to practice for 2 hours before practice started. And so like he was the workout partner, if you will, right? And if I didn't want to go do something, which there was plenty of times I didn't want to do it, he would, be kicking my ass out of bed or whatever and be like, no, we got to go do this. We got to do that. And that carried over beyond athletics to, school, to social events that we were doing, like crazy random trips to like go see Marilyn Manson play in San Jose that we did. Like, somebody was like giving away tickets and it was like 45 minutes before the show started. And we're like, oh, sure, we can make it to San Jose in 45 minutes during rush hour. Right. I'll spare you the details of how we got there illegally, but so he was like the one that could keep up with me, and it was very hard for me to find people who could keep up with me. And I knew, and I think even though he didn't mention it, he probably knew too. But like there was 6 of us who lived not in the same dorm room, but like right next to each other. Right. And yeah, of that 6, there was one person, one roommate in each room who we knew was going to be more responsible and make something of themselves than the other. Right. So like, it's a sad story in some ways. These are like, some of our good friends, but like my roommate, unfortunately, for 4 years, had a mental illness and dropped off, the face of the earth, and has been homeless on the streets for 15, almost 20 years or so. Our other friend, Javier's roommate, lived kind of a wild, reckless life and passed away, unfortunately, a number of years ago. Tony's roommate, who was also on our tennis team, was a bit of a wild man and partied too much, got into trouble, got into hard drugs, ended up in jail. Yeah, but it was like me, Tony, and Javi. I think on some level we knew that we were the 3 who were gonna, make something of ourselves, if you will. But Tony was the first one who actually did that, right? Tony was the first one who actually like was responsible right away, got a job, started making money, and all this kind of thing. So hopefully that answers your question for you, John.
Yeah.
All right.
And my dad just kicked me to the curb. He said, "Here's your first and last. See you later," which was good.
Let's go to Vicky. Are you there, Vicky? I see you.
I am.
There you go.
So I asked so many questions. Which one are you looking at?
Hey, this is your time, Vicki. I'm not looking at any questions. You ask the question you want to ask.
Perfect. I wanted to ask you about putting the MSA in place. What has happened to me is spending a year putting the MSA in place and then just not getting the traction from it. Even though I've gone in, I've actually negotiated in the MSA training and, you know, all these things. So what can you say that you've done that might help me?
Well, I've done the exact same thing with the ones where I have these global MSAs. I've put in like negotiated rates, everything. So it's just a plug and play. That's an awesome move that you want to do that. Once you do that, it makes it a lot easier. Now, when you say you haven't gotten traction, what have you done that led to that? And is the main group that's using it, are they seeing a lot of value that you can leverage?
Good questions. So I think the biggest obstacle I have is getting the introductions into the other groups and the other areas. And I kind of pride myself, like you, actually, I relate to you a lot, but I pride myself in those relationships and the trust and so forth and so on. But I'm missing something because one is a major bank specifically, and one's a big defense company. And I like I said, I spent a year getting this in place, and even putting in the MSA that there were to be introductions to these groups and so forth and so on, but getting someone to actually act on that is where I'm falling short.
Well, I'm trying to think what I mean, other things I've done also that could help too is build in incentives for people to make introductions.
Yeah, what kind of incentives?
I've done that.
What kind of incentives?
So, you know, for instance, for one of the things, we have a managed service component, right, for our solution. There's options, can you get us an introduction to this group? You know, I'll include a free insight report, which our insight reports are 60 hours, and the cost per hour is 220. So that's a significant amount of money to just to get an introduction if we get traction, right? But and they need, and if it's, so that's an angle I play, knowing that, you know, that customer already loves the services they're already getting, you know, the reports that we're dialing in. If we throw in another free one or two, could that push them over the edge to, okay, maybe take the time here to like sit in on a meeting and help out.
That's really good. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I even have other.
Sorry. When I think of incentives, I think of like shady stuff. I don't know. But
no, I am anti-shady stuff. That's not
me too. Me too. That's why. But we were going to say you've done other things such as.
Yeah, I mean, so other things, obviously, building those relationships. I really go. You know, I can't emphasize that enough. To, you know, I'll go back to one of my champions at Disney, and I have many. You know, I always, whenever I go down to meet with them in person, I know right now in COVID it's not ideal, but there's different things you can get creative with, whether it's you know, whiskey tasting or tequila tasting, or having a chef come on board, a celebrity chef, and cook to some of your top customers and bring in a prospect. There's all kinds of cool things that you have to really think outside the box, and people are actually open to it. But back in the day, I'd always make a point to try to do something nice for those customers that are allowed to accept those things. It's difficult when there's like a Costco, they don't. So you're really just stuck at like, yeah, or Walmart. They said, no, I can't do. But where you can do that, it's just leveraging those relationships and trying to build that trust where, I mean, the other day I had a demo with Hong Kong Disney, and I had at 6:30 at night, and I had one of my champions from the U.S. team hop on the call and talk about how awesome a job we're doing. And I didn't have to talk for 15 minutes. She did all the talking. So it's, you know, because of, you know, I take care of her in different ways. Not that I give her free reports, but that could be an angle of an incentive that you potentially could offer. Okay. But it goes back to the value of, even if they're not, if you have the MSA and your main customer is seeing value, to be able to package that up in a way that is relevant to the new group you're going to is, I mean, that's the biggest part of it, I think. And then, like I said, always never go in siloed to just one contact. If you're not having traction, craft a message for your boss to send to the next person. You know, and the big thing is craft it yourself. Don't say, hey, send a message, right?
Yeah, because it'll
Have
never
that
happen.
crafted.
No
And
offense, but
yeah, no, it won't. Yeah, I mean, when I get to the point where I have my CEO involved, I'll go to my executive assistant and say, can you put this email in his send box and hit send? So I'll
That's
go
funny.
all different layers and try to hit it that other group within the organization, and not just because sometimes we get stuck at keep trying. Hey, just following up. You know,
Right.
did you get my message? And then you get stuck and weeks go by, months go by. So I already just go off the top and just hit them all at once.
Gotcha. One more question, if I may. Walmart.
Yeah.
Are you
Sneaking an
working with
extra
their
one in.
legal- Pardon?
I said you're sneaking an extra one in. Go for it.
Walmart. Do you deal with their legal?
Yes, I haven't gotten to the point where we're doing a global NSA. It's been siloed by group,
Absolutely.
which I'm trying to. The big, you know, so Sam's Club has their legal, like a legal component. Walmart Canada does. Walmart Mexico does. But where I'm trying to get in, as you know, is Walmart Labs, and there is the person in there. There's an executive there that I got introduced to her, and then she shot me down to someone else. But I'm working my way back in. And there's a legal component there. If I could get into that legal, that's where would be golden, right?
I was just
I'm
wondering
trying
if
to
we
get some
could
other shifts.
I was just wondering if we could exchange some, you know, contact names. I'm sure you've got some I don't, and that sort of thing. So, but
yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. Happy to chat. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Duty, we could go on for a long time. It feels like the duty calls for me and my family. I'm sure Tony's got to get going with that as well. Tony, big guy, appreciate you, man. I got a lot of good comments in the chat as well as off the chat, just privately. So thanks for coming by and dropping some knowledge on everybody. I know this is, you know, not your normal cup of tea, like getting out in front of all these people, but you should see all these comments, dude. Everybody wants to hear from you, man. I got like 3 or 4 people who are like, why is this guy not running an enterprise sales organization? I'm just saying.
Appreciate it.
I'm just
and
saying.
I didn't see
So,
all the chat comments, so I apologize if I didn't catch all those. I'm trying to focus on the camera here, but yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn, please. Happy to help wherever I can and connect.
All right, everybody. Y'all have a good night. We'll see you soon. See some of you Thursday, hopefully.
Thanks. Good night.
Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Good night.